global depression or the Great Depression. So this we take 1929 as the signal. Really, it was coming on. You could see it coming on before then, and then with the trade stuff after that. It's at the 30s were an awful period economically, and I'm going to say that this is more important than World War II for forming the American character. So when we go back and we talk, nowadays you all will hear it as the greatest generation. They mean the World War II generation, but really that's the generation that was coming out of the Depression. It was bad in America at the time. All right, and so economic problems, the crash set it off. And if you hear about this again, this is the same thing that happened in the Great Financial Crisis, but to a greater degree with less money down with a lot of these institutions that they were trading with. But they're putting money, but they're not putting all of the money up. They're just putting a small percentage of what they're trading up on as collateral. And so when it goes south, when the trade doesn't go good, they owe enormous sums and they don't have it. They can't pay it. And so when one or a few major players starts going down, nobody knows how bad it gets until you see like who can't buy what, who has to cash in, who has. I mean, it scares the bejesus out of people. And if you do remember the financial part of the Great Financial Crisis from a few years ago, you remember that everybody was sitting around thinking, well, why are they throwing trillions and trillions of dollars at the U.S. and the world economy in general? It's because of that they're panicking. They're scared beyond belief because what they're not coming out and saying on television is we're really not, nobody knows how far we are from like the gas trucks not running anymore. So complete societal collapse as far as society as we know it anyway. But they can't say that. All right, so I liken this Great Financial Crisis anyway to it's kind of like an old truck. So everybody, if you got an old farm truck or you drove one of these or you're still driving one of these, think about a time when before carburation or before fuel injection, when you still had carburation and very simple motors, everybody would run into an oil leak. But you knew as long as you kept oil in it, you're still probably going to be okay with the design of those engines anyway. So that's what I liken it to before that Great Financial Crisis. Just trillions and trillions of dollars, but don't let that motor seize, because if you let the motor seize, well, then you're going to have to go buy a new truck, all of that. But here, they just went off the train tracks for the entire world. How we reacted was with a sharp drop in international trade. So this is a different sort of tariff act than the stuff that's going on now. And a different manufacturing situation in America and all that. But what I'm going to talk about here in the next screencast is how this affected Germany. Right, so Germany was, after World War I, Germany was not able to sort of get it together. And the other Europeans extracted a pretty tough price with them. And then on top of that, we cut trade off on our end. And so I'm going to talk about all of this as a formative cause for World War II. So not an excuse, just things that are in the water at the time. All right, so it's in this sort of the enormous personal stuff. See, if you've ever talked with anyone from this time period, they will talk about how bad it is. If you have, I guess for you all, it would be great grandparents or past, if they're still living. If they're like my grandparents, they would have a pantry that's really part of the house, right? I mean, sometimes an actual add-on to the house. So an enormous amount of food in there, especially all the stuff you're going to can from the garden. You're going to have a huge garden, going to can everything, going to hoard coffee and other things, all that sort of stuff. So very, very different than how we think about it now. So I don't know that this is changing a whole lot still, but in terms of how I've thought about stuff most of my life, probably like how your parents have thought about stuff. But why would I need to buy a television now if I can go another few months, maybe catch a sale with one of the weekends coming up? Maybe I can. I'm waiting for this next technology, for the new technology to get a little bit cheaper or whatever it is. All right, things are always going to get better and cheaper. That was not the way people looked at it at the time. Roosevelt comes along, strikes the New Deal after he gets in office with Congress. And what this essentially sets is a different view. Like, how are we going to approach this in America? So what we're going to do is we're going to put a lot of safety nets in, but especially the big thing for going forward, the safety net of Social Security. It's way more complicated than this if you want to do a presentation on it. But this is one of the things that has legs. It lasts a long time. And then, so Medicare, which is going to come a couple of decades after this in the Johnson administration, people will say that we're going to undo the New Deal stuff, and that means we're going to get rid of, or at least really trim down, Social Security and Medicare. But Medicare didn't actually start here. And if just a bit of trivia while we're here, everybody knows about by the way, you could do this for your final presentation if you really wanted to. It used to be at 56 and 1417, the big old building there. It used to be a place in Sherman where older people who didn't have anyone to take care of them would go to, but also younger children. It wasn't an insane asylum as is commonly said around town. And so people who didn't really have any place else to go could stay there, and they would take a buggy down to where you see the train tracks coming up by the library in Sherman. And there used to be an interurban rail. They would go into Dallas when they could, and all. They had a garden and all of that. Anyway, one of the things that led that to its demise wasn't any murder or ghost or anything like that you may or may not have heard. I'm not sure what's circulating now in Sherman. But it was just later on in the Johnson administration, as an extension of the New Deal type of program, after you got Medicare going, well, you have to meet regulations and about like how to conduct all of this. So if just practical things like you need to be able to get a gurney upstairs, you need to have lifts, you need to have, if the building's not built up to the kind of code that's going to support that, then they're going to go someplace else because now they're going to have money to go someplace. Led to its demise is the long story short. All right, but maybe just message me if you're interested in that. I'll try to help you out a little bit. You're probably going to have to research I don't know if it was called the Herald Democrat at the time. I think it was called 2 or 3 different names before that, and we'd have to search through the archives, I think.